Hello and welcome from the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. I have with me a very special guest, Nobel laureate Shimon Peres, former president of Israel, former prime minister of Israel, and a very young man at heart, a man who loves science, a man who loves young people, and a man of peace. To you we give Nobel laureate Shimon Peres. Shimon Peres, you are a very young man at a little over 90. What keeps you so fit and fine?
Well, I think you are young as your dreams, and you're old as your age. What I learned in my life is that dreaming is by far better than remembering. There is nothing to remember because the past is dead, and the past doesn't have a future. But there's much to learn, to imagine, to dream, because the future is full of innovations. And actually, we face a deep revolution in our life. For thousands of years, we were living on land. Now we are living on science. It's a major change. When you used to live on land, war was inevitable, because in order to be greater, you took away land from somebody else. The one that you took from him would never forgive you, like, say, Great Britain and India. And for that reason, you have either a war or a conflict, inevitable. Now we live in an age of science. In order to become greater, you don't have to take from anybody. You have to make yourself better. And every person can do it. It's a major change. Then science doesn't have borders, doesn't have flags, doesn't have bosses, and politics looks very pale. But still, in many countries, you have both the old age and the new age, and they slow down the development. So I believe we have a chance, we have to go ahead, and once the world will become more learned, more scientists, it will be better. Just I want to add one point. It doesn't mean that science doesn't have problems, because science is neutral. It can fall in the hands of evil people, as it can be in the hands of right people. And for that reason, I believe there is no technology without morality.
You've been a politician for close to more than 6 decades. At heart, you are very much in love with science. For the future of the world, what do you think is better? Both politics and science, or science is better for the future?
Politics is disappearing. The prestige of politics is at lowest point. Young people are reluctant to enter politics because they say there is something wrong with politics. Basically, a political leader says, I'm great, I'm strong. People ask him, are you? Can you bring an end to terror? No. Can you bring an end to social gap? No. So what makes you think they are a great guy? And then the politician himself, in a democratic system, has to make promises before the elections that he cannot implement after the elections. So he loses a great deal of trust. For that reason, we have global companies who really run our economy, but there is no global government.
That is true.
Yes.
And that is how multinationals work. No
Right.
borders, no flags.
Right.
You're absolutely right in that. When you started off as a young man, Israel is a tiny nation. Did you ever imagine that Israel will become a powerhouse, and a powerhouse for startups?
No. Because all what we have known about was against us. It's a tiny little land, a refusing land. We have had desert in the south. We have swamp in the south, in the north. We didn't have a drop of water. We have one river. which is very famous, the Jordan River, but it doesn't have water. We have two lakes, one dead, the other is dying. We didn't have any natural resources. So we discovered that we really have nothing. And that's what made us great. Because when you have nothing, you discover you have something which is very important, the human being. History is a story of people that have blessed the land, not the land has blessed the people.
So at that point, did you think that Israel will become a startup nation with 5,000 really companies which are very, very young?
No. At that
So
time,
what is the secret of this?
I'll tell you. That time, I went to become a member of a kibbutz because our ideology was that we shall cultivate the land with our own hands, that we should really work, not depend upon others to do it. But when we started to cultivate the land, we saw that the land is refusing. So we started to experience with the land. We started with agriculture, to see how can we make a better tree, how can we make a better irrigation, and all this led us to develop an agriculture which is based on high tech. So while I came to cultivate the land, I learned that you have to cultivate the human being. And at a very early age, I started to dream about science because of that. Then there was another story. We weren't met friendly. Actually, the Arabs around us attacked us. Again, we were tiny and small in numbers as well. There were 40 million Arabs around us. We were 650,000 Jewish people. We didn't stand a chance. So one against one, we are lost. Then they have armies. We have had a war before we have an army. So again, we started to think, how can we equalize? And again, we turned to science. So the two great attempts, the scientific attempts, became because we didn't have land, and the second because we didn't have friends. We were alone. And I was a great dreamer at an early age. So today, when people ask me what is your greatest mistake, they ask me what is the greatest achievement, I say the one that will come tomorrow. But when they ask me what is your greatest mistake, I say the dream was too small. And I recommend to everybody, dream greater, don't hesitate. The greater you dream, the greater you will have.
India recently lost former President APJ Abdul Kalam. He also used to say, dream and dream big.
Yes.
You have met former President Kalam, who was an aeronautical engineer and then became the people's president. Do you have something recall from meeting former President Kalam?
Look, he was a brilliant person and a warm personality, the same. I met him when he stopped being president, because in my experience it was the other way around. I handled science without being a scientist. Became a president without knowing it, and he was elected, partly because he was a scientist. And a scientist is a person who is oriented on the future, on innovation. And we had a common language immediately. But he was also an extremely pleasant person. I could feel I met a comrade. I regret it very much when I learned he passed away.
You've been to India several times. You have met Prime Minister Modi. You have a project on agriculture in Maharashtra. Right. Can you recall of your meeting with Prime Minister Modi, and what do you think of Indo-US relations, Indo-Israeli relations? They were in a closet earlier, they are coming out.
Modi, Prime Minister Modi, represent, in my eyes, the new India. It's no longer the India of Gandhi or the India of Nehru. He is on one hand a visionary, on the other hand he's an executor. He knows how to run. And he has shown it when he was the head of the
The state of Gujarat.
The state of, yes. Now when I met him, I was really surprised by his charisma, by his personal charm, and by being so open, straightforward, and to the point. I read his speech of inauguration, which lasted, I think, for 3 hours. I was amazed to see he remembers all the details. He doesn't try anything to beautify. Everything is being called by the name. And there are things he says, well, we have to be ashamed. Like, for example, there is lack of restrooms in schools. He mentioned it. And he went one by one over a great list of what India has to do, but he did it also not as a pessimist, but a man that believes you can handle it and overcome it.